Me and the boy wear the same shoe size. He wants a pair of Jordan 4s for Christmas. I buy him, and then I steal them from his closet, like a twisted, Grinch-themed episode of Blackish. The kicks are totems to my youth. I wear them like Mercury on my black man feet. I can't get those young freedom days back fast enough. Last time I was really fast, I was 16, outrunning a doorman on the Upper East Side. He caught me vandalizing his building. Not even on some artsy shit, just stupid. Of all the genders, boys are the stupidest. 16 was a series of barely getting away and never telling my parents. I assume my son is stewarding this tradition well. 16 is the low-end theory and Marvin Gaye on repeat. 16 is younger than Trayvon and older than Emmett Till. At the DMV, my boy is in line to officially enter his prime suspect years. Young, brown, behind the wheel, a moving semaphore signaling the threat of communities from below. On top of the food chain, humans have no natural predator, but America plays out something genetically embedded and instinctual in its appetite for the black body. America guns down black bodies and then walks around them, bored, like laconic lions next to half-eaten gazelles. Bloody lips. America and the black body on some Nat Geo shit. The boy passes his road test at the DMV. He does this strut, sea-walk, broken Fortnite thing on the way in to finish his paperwork. True joy and calibrated cool under the eye of my filming iPhone. The victory dance of someone who's just salvaged a draw. He's earned this win, but he's so 16, he can't quite let his body be fully free. When he's 3, I'm in handcuffs in downtown Oakland. 5 minutes ago, I was illegally parked. Now I'm in the back of a squad car, considering the odds that I'm going to die here. 15 minutes away from my child who expects that in 18 minutes, daddy's going to pick him up from nursery school. There are no pocket-sized cameras to film this moment. So I learned a lot of big words at 16, getting ready for the SAT. None of them come to me now. In the police car, the only thing that speaks is my skin. I know this. I was parked in a bus zone on Broadway and 12th, running quickly to the ATM in the corner, pulled the cash out just as the police car pulls up behind me. Give him the aw shucks, my bad, Robert Townsend earnest black man face. He waits till I'm back in the driver's seat, then hits the siren, takes my license with his hand on his gun. Comes back 2 minutes later, gun drawn, another patrol car now, 4 cops now, my face on the curb, hands behind my back, shackled. I'm angry and humiliated only until I'm scared. And then sad. I smell like the last gasp before my own death. I think of how long the boy will wait till he understands I'm not coming. I think how his last barely formed memory of me will be the story of why I never came for him, and I try to telepathically say goodbye. The quiet brings me no peace. The silence makes it hard to rest. In the void, there is anger mushrooming in the moss at the base of my thoughts, a fungus growing on the spine of my freedom attempts. I am free from all except contempt, a spirit of an unarmed civilian in a time of civil unrest. No peace, just Marvin Gaye falsettos arching like a broken-winged sparrow, competing against the empty sirens, singing the police. Apparently, some cat from Richmond had a warrant out on him. And when the cop says my name to dispatch, dude doesn't hear Marc Joseph, he hears Mike Johnson. I count 7 cars and 18 cops on the corner. The pride around a pound of flesh. By the grace of God, I am not fed to the beast today. Magnanimously, the first cop makes sure to give me a ticket for parking in a bus zone before he sets me free. The boy is 16 now. Enough body to fill my shoes. I have gray in my beard, and it tells the truth. He has license to drive in the hollow city, to navigate traffic in the age of autonomous vehicles. You know, people say the talk. Like that shit happens just once. Like my memory's been erased and my internet is broken. Like I can't read today's martyred name. Like today's the day that I don't love my son enough to tell him, bro, I really don't give a fuck about your rights, yo. Your mission is to get home to me. Live to tell me the story, boy. Get home to me. Today's talk is mostly happening in my head as he pulls onto the freeway and Marvin Gaye comes on the radio. I am wearing the boy's shoes. And the goodbye in my head is a tune that I almost never said. I am wearing the boy's shoes. And the tune in my head is the goodbye I almost never said, a goodbye the length of a wordless requiem, the length of a warning, a kiss, a whiff of his neck, the length of a revelation and a request, flying high in the friendly sky without ever leaving the ground. My pain is a walking bass line, a refrain placated flush against the strain of my fading lifeline. This is not to be romantic, but to assert a plausible scenario for the existential moment. Driving while black is its own genre of experience. Ask Marvin. It may not be the reason why you sing like an angel, but it surely has something to do with why heaven bends to your voice. The boy driving, the cop in the rearview mirror is a ticket to ride or die. When you give a black boy the talk, you pray he is of the faction of the fraction that survives. You pitch him the frequency of your telepathic goodbye. Channel the love sustained in Marvin's upper register under his skull cap. Black music at its best is an exploded black hole responding to the call of America. At its worst, strike us down. The music lives, dark like tobacco or cotton, like cotton in muddy water. Get home to me, son. Like a love supreme, a God as love, a love overrules, feathers for the angelic lift of the restless dead, like a theme for Trouble Man or 16-year-old boy free to make mistakes and live through them, grow from them. Holy, holy, mercy, mercy me, mercy, mercy. I wouldn't call us witches, but I'm from slave revolt people. Send Massa back to his crib and suffer the next 200 years in global prison for it, people. I heard somewhere that Haiti is 95% Catholic, 100% Vodou. I haven't really been to church in a minute, but my mother's mother was best friends with Jesus. At 94, when she passed, I claimed from her effects a piece of wood she collected while in Jerusalem, in pen, her unmistakable script. She's written on one side, J'ai vu le sépulcre du Christ vivant. On the other side, the date, the 21st Juillet, 1984. In 1984, back in the States, Reagan, voodoo economics. Gomer wasn't with that shit. J'ai vu. I saw the living Christ, Christ vivant. In the actual 1984, Gomer wasn't reading Orwell. She was doing something she believed to be holy. In my hand, I hold a talisman of belief. What do my people believe to be true? 45 lies, I cry no tears. Anne-Marie Deltour's grandkid, I no fool. I born here cause my parents' folks was running from death squad's muted speech and no option to vote. J'ai vu, she wrote, like a taunt. Come on, son, look around. What do you see? What can you put in the palm of a not yet born grandson as a tribute to what you believe? Gomer say, live to come to see your faith made material. Don't be fooled by that old make America voodoo. Stay close to the site of the magic and believe. I probably don't like humans as much as I love the sounds they make, specifically melodic sounds, cello and bow, slow and gripping. Tony Allen sounds, Lettucey casually humming to herself while listening to Billie Holiday. I like humans fine, but divine human music makes me vibrate. No ego or ownership, no ordinary love. The voice gives me no choice. My purest love is music. In the failing light of empire, the nation grieves alone. Their pastors left them to pray over their dead while he's in the back rewriting the Bible alone. Together, the nation grieves, mourns the recently departed and the norms of their past, living, mourning the death of normalcy. Sure would be great to have someone help us share this grief. Let it be said that in the time of the pandemic, music stepped up to be our one true leader. The one place where love and movement united humans, battles between music super producers, savage TikToks, concerts from the crib stabilized the country's consciousness when it was beset by panic and viral uncertainty. Certainly, that is love. I am grieving and I long to be led with love. These are sad times, yo. Folded over my own center without a prayer. Footsteps unwarping wood overhead, I am cleanly rotting beneath, desiccated wind-blown jasmine star in a cobweb, a corner of cedar, a flurry of skin and ash, a blue hunger, my sadness a ladle unto the cloudless lake above me. In the economy of dis-ease, I've invested more in wiping my ass than cleansing my soul. I'll be eating these sheets for months, and all my leaders can offer me are gospel notes of amazing lack of grace and poorly composed critiques of the sun. You know, the sun is basically a welfare queen, just sits there, untrustworthy, hides in the dark, can't even look him in the eye. If the sun ran for office in Florida, it'd be 48 to 47% in the polls, no lie. The quixotic charm of isolation has eroded. I've watched every single piece of content on Netflix and also read the same page of my bedside novel 19,000 times. I know every word on page 143 of The Water Dancer. What I could sure use now is an example of love from something other than music, a human touch of leadership from someone who considers how many of us are dying alone, gathers us, pastors us, tells us they've seen death, didn't see it as a vision, felt it as a lived permission, inception of an intuition of what we can all expect, encourage the living toward their larger purpose, born with lips to whisper, born to kiss the names of our teachers back to the wind so their spirit might hear it and vibrate, a mitzvah, incarnate and back again, reciprocal energy, spirit and flesh. In my sadness, I long for some guidance by an empath, says don't worry, flock, at the moment of death we are one with life transcendent. We are the dance divine, spreading like child laughter, blowing dandelion pollen into the spring light. We are the winter cool, released like children freed by the bell on the last day of school. Summertime magic, fool in death, we are autumn enriched leaf, emanating transformation hues. Freedom colored, we will never fall. We dance into the sky, a rope as thick as the way we lived our lives by our side, a rope thick as our life to help you climb. You become the light, you become the dance, you become the music you loved most on earth. Lord, where is the leader that brings us together like music? Says, don't worry, fam, this sucks, but I promise you are not alone. I got your back, like your favorite honest love song. Pre-dawn. Matriarch baking bread, the safety of the scent is my silent alarm. The nose knows the day, like the praying Muslim knows the Adhan. I am called from dream, waking imperceptibly different than sleep, respire, distracted, disoriented, and unpatterned. Grandma is a kitchen shaman, martial, monastic, anchor of the grassland, white flour, black hands, bread to disembroider hunger, her back coal hard, arms move like tremors, seismic need, possessed, mounted, surrender. Last night, I was a tornado chasing the morning. Friday night, chasing a square break, intercut, fighting, surviving, grace. Some nights, I am darker than the hearts of the men sent to hunt me. Some nights, I drink too much memory. I am governed by my southern impulses. There is exhaustive collapse, a relentless sound that reaches from a place before breath in my legs, the evidence of work, lonely, familiar, shelled, pulsed, sex. On those nights, I am haunted by the hunters, and I am my grandmother's child, no less. No less a child in the park, a man out for a run, a woman sleeping in her bed, no less a threat, dangerous as lavender, peppermint, rising sacrament. I am a man with memory, a fondness for safety, a brain riddled by accidental folklore. It is the summer of loss and ash. I am a man having a child's recurring dream of dying and return, crying slowly, risking my hands in a fire, a pre-dawn memory where I rise and never burn.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for the powerful, honest, and tender new film, Untold Secrets of the Heart Chamber by Gregory Maqoma and Marc Bamuthi Joseph, with video production and direction by David Szlasa. I'm Jody Nimberger, the Executive Director of the American Dance Festival.
And I'm Pam Young, Executive Director of DANCECleveland.
I have had the privilege of presenting and commissioning work by Gregory in the past, but until now I haven't had the great fortune of working with Marc. When I reached out to Gregory about a potential collaborative project, he mentioned he had been interested in working with Marc.
These two esteemed artists were familiar with each other's work and were excited by the opportunity to create something together that spoke to this moment in time. We at Dance Cleveland, having admired both of these artists, were thrilled when Jody invited us to join with ADF in this amazing project.
We are delighted and humbled to help foster the creation of new work and to share it with you, and to continue the exploration with a deeper look at the process and work with the following moderated discussion. Each artist selected a moderator. Gregory selected Jefferson Bob's Tshabalala. He is a multi-skilled creative who is interested in radically transforming the current landscape in the arts in South Africa. He also believes that more needs to be done to give a platform to young artists and their works.
For this project, Marc asked Gina Belafonte to moderate. Ms. Belafonte's professional work thrives in the intersection of activism and entertainment. In addition to being the executive director of Sankofa, a social injustice organization that elevates the voices of the disenfranchised and promotes peace, justice, and equality, she is an award-winning film director, producer, a lecturer, and an actress.
Before we begin this stimulated, moderated conversation, we want to thank the funders who have helped make this possible. For ADF, generous support was provided by the Doris Duke SHS Foundation's Award for New Work. Additional support provided by RBC Wealth Management.
And for Dance Cleveland, thank you to Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, the Ohio Arts Council, the Cleveland Foundation, and so many more. Without further ado, we welcome Marc, Gregory, Gina, and Jefferson. Thank you.
All right, here we go. Intercontinental screens. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to everybody watching from all parts of the world. And then even, a big and lovely warm welcome to the people who have made an incredible work that we're going to be reflecting on.
Yeah, so beautiful, so beautiful.
So lovely, so caring, so loving. We're going to be having this conversation, discussing the work, discussing elements of the process, and just really engaging with the artists about this really phenomenal offering that they've put together and the conditions under which they've put it together. An incredible work, right, Gina?
So incredible, so beautiful, so moving. I watched it and my heart opened. Like I could feel an opening. It was so rich with contemplation. It brought up so many different emotions and feelings of joy, of fear, of marginalization, of radicalization. I mean, it was so many things. And it also, interestingly, touched upon so many things historically for me. It brought back images of certain protests, certain dinner parties. I mean, it was really like all encompassing. I felt like it was almost from, it's, you know, lately we've been talking about sort of the Reconstruction period of America. And I feel like this piece is in its dawning, you know, it felt like a Renaissance piece. I kept on thinking also, what came first? The poem or the choreography, you know, or did it, or did, you know, Marc see Gregory's choreography and thought, oh, maybe I'll say this about that, or did Marc do the poetry and was Gregory moved to move because of what was being said, and it was the way it was presented. It was so seamless that it was all sort of just one, and it kind of felt like a jam happening in real time and improv. And I have a bunch of questions for later, but I was, as you can see, quite a bit.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I think you've summed up my entire feeling and response. And what I think I can do is to say thank you to Marc and Gregory for that palpable generosity that then translated onto that screen, translated onto that text, translated into your movements. And thank you for continuing that conversation and for allowing us into your process. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You're both very, very kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
such a gift.
And I'm going to kick us off with the first question, which is going to segue from some of what Gina has already mentioned. And I'm going to ask the question twice, and whoever feels the prompt to get into it, please do so. So the question goes: to be Black, to be man, to write, to move. Which elements of the choreography became poetry, and which aspects of the poetry are dancing? And I'll ask that one more time. To be Black, to be man, to write, to move. Which elements of the choreography became poetry, and which aspects of the poetry are dancing?
Profound.
It's
Marc,
a very, very exciting question.
Absolutely. So, Marc, as a poet, I'll give it to you. It's very poetic.
Well, as an educator, I love the question. As an educator in the tradition of Paulo Freire, I really respect a great question. As a dramaturg, I really respect a great question. So thank you for it. I have a lot of impulses, but I think what speaks to me first now is that there is a poetic of our relationship, and there's a dance in our relationship. And so to disturb the question just a little bit, probably what actually came first was the respect that we have for each other, and the respect that we have for one another's positioning, both self-imposed and maybe kind of externally decreed or codified. And that relationship between two male-coded figures across continents, that relationship is a dance. And that relationship is poetic and has poetic import. So that's probably what actually came first sequentially was the creativity imbued in the relationship itself. In terms of maybe a more tactical sequence, the answer is yes. There are elements in the piece that arose because Gregory was responding to something he'd heard me write and perform. There are elements of the piece that were composed in response to me watching Gregory perform a whole other work. There are elements of the piece that arise directly from a conversation that we may have had. The title of the piece itself were just words that were spoken in a conversation that we were having together. Wow. So yeah, the answer is yes. And maybe just like the last thing that I'll say on this before I pass it to my brother is, I was born in 1975 in the United States. I'm a first generation American. I am of Haitian descent. But my way into art was through hip hop music and hip hop culture, in which words dance. I'm clocking your Versace, stay watching your. There's a way, there's a way that
amazing.
The way that I heard language, both as an acolyte of, let's say, the great Toni Morrison or the great Zora Neale Hurston, and the way their words dance, and also as an acolyte of the great Black Thought, the great Chuck D. Bass, how low can you go? Death Row, what a brother know. Once again, back is the incredible Blind Animal, the incredible D, Public Enemy #1. Like, those words dance.
Yeah.
Those words dance. So that's the only way that I know language should function. Musically, kinesthetically, and in deference and in respect for whoever it is that you're speaking to. And it was a great honor to be speaking with my brother Gregory. So I hope that answers the question, Greg. I don't know if you have thoughts on the same.
Yeah, I think you've taken a lot of my thoughts, Mark.
Okay.
Which is always great, because that's what made the work to be what it is, because we're feeding from each other, in terms of what we're able to provide each other. But I think I want to take it even further to say that there was also the heart, which is the desire for us to want to work together, which for me was the starting point of allowing a process of even having to connect. It needed to start somewhere. And I think, ironically, even the title speaks about the 4 chambers, because it is exactly the 4 chambers that had allowed the process or pushed us to a point where we really wanted to connect together. And once we connected together, it was hard to separate the words from the movement, or the movement from the words. So it became really a marriage that was, even when it was trying to separate itself, or one was trying to separate one from itself, it was hard, because that marriage was really sealed through a desire for those in movement and in words to really connect, to say something, to reflect on something, to really comment on what is going on in your country, in my country, but also globally, what is going on. And as a Black man in a Black body, what is my position in this world that sees me differently? What is my position that can allow my art, my movement through your words, to really come to the front, to speak for me in beyond what words can really say. So I think for me, that's what it is.
Well, it does absolutely have that effect. It's incredible how there are moments when the text juxtaposes to the movement, as well as completely corresponds and is parallel to it. And I found that to be so strategic, whether it was by accident or not. It was so, so authentic to life, as we walk through it, thinking like, we know what the deal is. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, but you don't. And you're kind of like taken off guard, and you have to pivot and redirect. And then also the tremendous amount of elevation to the issues, because Mark, you're speaking words, right? So you had the opportunity to choose anything you wanted as relates to the words. You could hit it over the head, or you could, and there's moments where you are very blatant in it, and sometimes it becomes very metaphoric. And with the movement, it felt the same way. The movement was sometimes just metaphoric, like when you fall back on the couch in both directions, and the shoes, just, those things give such opportunity for personal interpretation of what that brings up on so many levels, that it was just, I couldn't stop. I wanted to watch it over and over again, because it was like, it was just feeding me in a way. And, to your point, in terms of the desire to connect, that's one of the questions I have. And I guess I'll ask it extremely broadly for both of you to answer, which is, how much did this past year, forget the whole last 4 years of life or 10 years of life, but how did the last year around the issue of this global pandemic feed into the way in which you engaged the work? Because, and the reason why I say because is because I kept thinking, I wonder what this would have been like if it had been in a black box theater, or what would this have been like if they were able to do it as a film or a cinematic event without the restrictions of what COVID-19 has brought to us all. And so I'm interested to know how much of this last year informed the piece.
Sure. Well, I think for me, it starts with my own home, with my, the place that I'm in now. COVID forced me to take notice of the corners of my home, to take notice of even the colors on the walls. Because usually you are so consumed with work and the next gig. Where is the next paycheck coming from? You're chasing that. And this moment was about asking me to just sit back, relax, and see what is around you and use what is around you as a form of mental health, but also as a form of just simple appreciation of where I am, what I have, and what can I do with it.
Yeah.
So it was a critical moment of just realizing that I have so many shoes that probably I don't even need. And they became part of the set. They became part of, my expression, because quite honestly, what caught me in Marc's first opening text was the boy is 16 and he has a pair of Jordan shoes. I reflected on my 16th year, or when I was that age, around 15, 14, where I had to wear a pair of shoes, or for me to be able to wear the kind of pair of shoes that I wanted, I needed to go to church. So I needed to earn it. So for me to be in a position where it made me think, why do I have so many shoes? And it was like, because I now I don't have to wait for an occasion for me to have a pair of shoes. So it raised that obsession for me to continue to just buy and buy and buy shoes, because I had to always find a reason for me to wear a shoe in my teenage years. The condition was go to church for you to wear a pair of shoes. So it was that moment of realization of I am a consumer of things that I don't really need, but also at the same time, a realization that there is enough in terms of the rooms that I have in my own home.
Yeah, that concept of enough is startling.
Especially, thinking about all those shoes and us not being able to go outside.
Yeah, totally. My spending habits are definitely different
right
now, and maybe beginning with at least this is something that we experienced in the United States. Breonna Taylor was killed on March 13th. It's a Friday. About 2 days before, I think the night before, on the 12th. It was either the night before or 2 nights before. There was an NBA player, Rudy Gobert, who tested positive for COVID, and the entire National Basketball Association shut down. At the time of Breonna's murder, there wasn't a lot of attention paid very specifically on that act, although that act and the subsequent disavowal by the Attorney General to press charges against her killers later added to this idea of a double crisis, the virological crisis that we were experiencing, and then the explosion on the racial timeline. But on that Friday, the United States began turning down. The Kennedy Center announced that we would be suspending programming, for instance. All this stuff was starting to happen, and people started rushing to the stores to get toilet paper and rushing to the stores to get, what they thought to be essential items. We may not be able to buy whatever it is that we think that we need for the next 5 days or the next 6 days. So get water, get lentils or dry goods or canned foods or this thing. And it was probably for a month that people weren't able to buy paper towel or toilet paper. So this thing of like, what do I have? What do I need? What is essential? What is enough? These are really broad philosophical questions.
Right.
They take on a different kind of import in the realm of capitalism, and where capitalism, public health, and the racial timeline all meet. Before we continue, I do want to name, Gina, because you talked about the kind of like serendipitous explosions that happen in our piece. Some of that might be Gregory's doing, some of that might be my doing, but there's a lot of it that is our unseen collaborator, David Szlasa, who is the editor of the piece and really managed to take all the footage that we provided to him, in a third location. Gregory in South Africa, I'm in Washington, D.C. David is in upstate New York, and he's the one that really kind of heard us, accompanied us on the journey, and also created some of these moments, which quite frankly were surprises to the two of us as well.
Yeah.
Who danced with you?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, if I could just add, and I felt like he choreographed, our offering. Because there was absolutely we were not sitting with him to say, take this part and take that part. He was part of the journey from the beginning in terms of the conversations. But I feel that actually he's the choreographer of this piece, because he brought it all together, which is really amazing to see the final product being like that, from someone who's editing the material to really bring it into our understanding, or to really encompass the vision so well as he did.
Yeah. In terms of form, it's definitely something that we spoke of, because we've all been in however many Zoom meetings, countless Zoom meetings every day, and it's flat. It's 2 on a screen or 4 on a screen or 12 or 25, whatever the configuration is, it is flat. And when you talk about choreography and you talk about dance, David took what essentially is a flat format and configured it in a dimensional way. It was really amazing to.
Yeah. Yes, I was. It is definitely, there is a third eye in there. And I was going to speak to that also, and I'm so glad you brought it up. Jefferson, I could go in and in and in. I want to make sure that you get in there too. So.
Yeah, I'll get in there with this request. Gregory, I'm a size 10.
You're a size 10.
I love it. That's funny.
I'm a size 9, Jefferson.
My loss.
You can always do what we did.
But happy to share.
You could always do what we did when we were young. You could fold the back down.
Yes.
And use it as a little
Yeah.
Like when I loved a pair of shoes when I was a kid and my feet started to get bigger, I would just like fold the back down.
I think where I want to pick up from is from Gina's previous impulse around locating the piece in the American context, right? And where it sits historically, where it sits on the racial timeline. And what was so interesting for me as a South African viewer is how much the American words are a narrative of the South African experience, right? So and I sit in a country and a continent where the racial majority in terms of presence is there are more people of color in South Africa. That would mean there are more people of color in law enforcement. There are more people of color in national government, and the ills that are spoken about in the work around the racial ills are some that we're experiencing here, but from the same race. So I remember when I was 16 and what the police meant to me. I know what that feels like, and without looking at the law enforcer as someone of a different race to mine. And my second question really hinges on that, and I'd like to pose it to both of you once again. It reads, the mechanics of oppression are fundamentally about restricting voices and restricting mobility. In the Jim Crow context and in the Verwoerd context, these are paramount measures of control. In essence, to write one's being and to move one's body and to do so while Black is already an act of protest. In what ways did the restrictions of the pandemic remind you of your perpetual protest to be, to make, and to become?
So good.
Yeah, Jefferson.
I've been thinking about power, privilege, and freedom. Which of these three do I have the most of? What is the cost of each for me? What is the price I pay for having any of these things? And, you know, in your first question, you spoke both of Blackness and of maleness, Blackness and of manhood. And it occurs to me that I did not think of my power nor my privilege in my male body for a long time, because I politically identified first with the socially subordinate position of being in a Black body. Politically powerful, but hierarchically subordinate in terms of dominant power structures, dominant power paradigms. So yes, to be, when Langston Hughes spoke of freedom, he speaks of like dancing in the sun, to cast his arms wide. And freedom is a thing that is only experienced in the body. Freedom cannot be legislated. Thomas Jefferson in this country didn't write some words, and then Abraham Lincoln didn't write some words, and then we were free, Black, white, or other. Freedom is something that you experience in your body, and I often say that the experience of dancing is using your body in order to leave the body itself. And so maybe that's something that you're tapping into, is a desire for both of us to exercise our freedom in the non-democratic or political sense by being free in word and in kinesthetic, and choreographed action. That these kinesthetic behaviors are the actual ways that we are free. Through many of the protests in the last year, particularly in the summer of 2020, I was on a bicycle and I had a different kind of relationship to protest and power because sickness abounded. And so I wanted to get close to the act of protest, but not too close because I also had to mind my health and the health of the people around me. So if even in your desire to participate in struggle, to participate with your body in collective struggle, you have to mute yourself because this other thing was happening. Well, then in very many ways, the greatest way that you can behave as an instrument of protest is by yourself at your crib dancing. And that's what we were able to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, Marc. Now, I always think also in terms of art as a powerful tool. And I emphasize the word power because it is where we derive our own power to be able to stand in front of any social ill or anything that we feel it is somehow interfering with our own survival. Therefore, it is our art that we call upon to really stand in front, to exercise that power, to speak for us, to speak for those who can't necessarily speak for themselves. And at this point, or in this time of COVID-19, even though we've been silenced by COVID itself, our art was never silenced.
Right.
You know, radio, television, everything else that was art prevailing. Netflix is the most powerful and probably the most successful thing at the moment because of it was art that people had to lean towards to grieve. To grieve for a moment, to grieve the losses. They needed art.
I was just going to add to that, Gregory. I would argue that art is one of the most powerful tools, and as we say at Sankofa, to educate, motivate, and activate people. This is why, especially in America, we don't see, it's part of the social control because we don't see a subsidy for the arts. We don't see, arts is the first thing that's taken out of our schools. Arts is the first thing that's taken away because of the power that it holds in its expression. And in other countries where either communism or socialism is not a bad word, right? Those governments subsidize the arts. Those governments encourage their artists to generate thinking and radical thought. And more conservative and reactionary governments like the United States and other places tend to want to have a control and a hold on that. Because we saw what the power of the arts and media did in the Second World War. And there's this saying, and I feel like my father has said it over and over again, and I'm going to mess it up, but it's, if you can control what they see, then you can control what they know. And, you know, by taking away the arts from most of our Black and Brown communities, and then when we reinsert or we have the opportunity to bring programs back in, you can see how young people or people of all ages are liberated through the opportunity to express themselves. I mean, I can't tell you the countless times that we've brought the arts programs into institutions of oppression where people said, oh, if only I'd had that when I was younger. Oh, if only I'd had that, you know, when I was, or where I was, here, there, or the other, because it is in fact the arts that open up our hearts and minds and dare us and give us the permission to dream and have joy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, bye. But I can't say it over and over again enough how much this piece did all those things.
Yeah.
It makes you think, it makes you feel, it makes you imagine and dream. And Jefferson, what were you going to say?
Like, absolutely. I was going to sound like an echo. Like, really, and what was really so powerful for me about those ideas of barriers of access, right? I'm thinking about the South African context, the larger African context, where access to performing arts facilities and centers within your own district are so difficult to reach. The audacity of someone dancing in Johannesburg to be projecting that movement continents across is daring where I'm from. In a region where access to internet, access into inter-provincial collaboration is a dream. Access to inter-township collaboration is a dream. So to hear intercontinental access and to hear that people's voices across from South Africa to the America are making something that is already so audacious in the space that I come from, that act in itself would have succumbed to a group areas act of sorts here in this country, because under apartheid laws, people were restricted to particular regions.
Yeah.
And I think what was considered a restriction about these squares on our screens is also a transportation of creative output. So we may say there is this scarcity of meeting, but then there is this broadness of making meetings so readily available for people who can meet so far apart from each other, whom it was illegal for them to ever encounter each other. And I feel like to dance, to write, to speak to each other across those waves is such an act of radical protest, such that the existence of the work itself is already the audacity. So that's really amazing.
I mean, we don't get here. I will say that for me, I referenced my kind of biographical context earlier, but without the anti-apartheid struggle, without that liberation struggle, that formed the lexicon for my generation, I would say, because coming of political age in the 1980s and 1990s, the images of a person like Harry Belafonte, of the images of a person like Bayard Rustin, the images of Fannie Lou Hamer, the images, these were black and white images. Steve Biko was not in black and white. The images of Mandela were not in black and white. So even as many of those American freedom fighters that I just named were very present in living color during my political awakening, the vocabulary that I had was the vocabulary that was thus exhibited in the divestment movement, which was rampant on college campuses across the United States. Like, I remember wanting a pair of Reeboks and someone being like, "You can't buy Reeboks." because Reebok's already existed in South Africa. You can't do that.
That's right.
You know, the activism on college campuses across this country, a lot of that activism centered on removing board members or removing economic and investment portfolios that had anything to do with the South African government. So there is literal iconographic, literary, you know, artistic and melodic lineage of, you know, these poems that say we need a leader, we need someone to lead us like music. That thought, that concept doesn't exist in my life without hip hop, but also without the, you know, the music of the South African liberation struggle. So it is at once audacious and also the natural point, the natural vanishing point for us to be communicating in this way, because we are in many ways built out of the same struggle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
And
just
also, go ahead, Gregory.
I was just going to add on that, Mark, you know, without taking away, because we've made such a critical point, that there has been a rupture, that, you know, and artists are doing this, you know, they're reconstructing their past without even any form of restriction in terms of, am I right or wrong? They're not asking those questions anymore. Because there is a rupture already, and we live within the consequences of that rupture. So therefore, our role is to continue to provoke, because we've been provoked. The provocations have always been there. And it's for us to now to claim the space and say, we want to do it the way we feel it is correct and right, because it is the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And also, this, I would just to circle back to the very first question, and not the question itself, but a comment made, two Black men in itself, which is a poem in just that statement, to come together in this way, to bring this kind of art forward, is on the flip side, in the United States, you know, could be considered taboo or uncomfortable, or, you know, because we don't have a problem with when we see it like in rap or hip hop or in other forms where it's a far more in your face, sort of more stereotypically aggressive expression. And for us to see two Black men come forward choosing to use this form of communication as an invitation for us to heal is also extremely powerful.
Yeah. And it's also two Black men who also speak really and recognizing many centuries of our own histories, and recognizing also, you know, our grandmothers, our mothers, because we also speak for them. They didn't have this opportunity for them to speak in a way that we are speaking. And we are really representing their faith.
Absolutely. It's on the backs of those who came before us that allow us to be here today and to gather. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, in my personal relationships, I don't know how emotionally available I am right now. In terms of my most, I'm just in a more raw place.
I'm with you on that. I'm doing everything I've got to put it together right now.
Well, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm not emotionally intelligent. That doesn't mean that I don't have emotional literacy. So, so, you know, looking at some of the images that have come out of this work, and Gregory is absolutely right. The invocation of our grandmothers immediately lends, I'm going to use the word tenderness to the work, which Gina, responding to you, there's how we can make tenderness a more normalized part of Black masculinity is,
Yes.
I think, is really important towards struggle. Like where would any of us be? And again, I'll speak to the context of the United States. Donald Trump is the president right now if it's not for Black women. And that is quite literally the case. From Stacey Abrams in Georgia to just the way to having Joe Biden be the nominee to Kamala Harris as the vice president. It is the organizing power. It is quite literally the vote. It is the personage of Black women that have tilted the country in the direction that it's currently inclined towards. So there's a political debt, but there's just also a biographical debt for both Gregory and myself. The poems in Untold Secrets that are reflections on our grandmothers. Those matriarchs made strong men, and the strength of one's manhood or the implicit strength in the male body is not about sexual preference or sexual prowess, though we've assigned those codifiers to how it is that we think about masculinity. It is about those things, but it is much, much more. And I think that a kind of non-sexual tenderness, or tenderness and intimacy as not being framed solely as sexual devices, is really important, but exceedingly important if we're actually going to make political gains. To surrender to the wisdom and the power of Black women as Black men is completely necessary if we're going to do anything on this planet at all. And hopefully the peace, even though there are no women present, the presence of women is profound and noted and is a driving force in the work.
Well, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that what you're saying will actually transcend into action, because I think that there are a lot of men, Black men and white men, who talk a really great game about wanting to liberate Black women and put them in the forefront and bring them and usher them and support their vision. Those who are in places of power to do so, who say it, but don't always do it.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Me too. And also accountable.
Yes, accountability is
So
I take comfort in that.
Please hold us to it.
Opportunity. Come on now.
Yes.
To it, fam.
Yes.
Anyway. Yes.
We all for you.
Yeah. I was just saying, all we have to do is to make bread and share it.
Yes.
Gluten-free bread.
Yeah. There's a remarkable South African poet by the name of Koleka Putuma. She's based in Cape Town. Really incredible author and performance poet. And she, in one of her poems, one of the lines of hers that has become even brandished on slogans at protests and on T-shirts that she's recently released, is a phrase that reads, "You owe your dreams your courage." And that assertion from a young black female poet in South Africa is in a country where the alarming rates of gender-based violence, in a country where the treatment of women is not what one would even imagine it being close to what it is. Koleka Putuma, when she asserts that you owe your dreams your courage, borrows that thinking beyond Black women. So she gives that thinking generously to people who need it, who are the Black women whom she speaks to, but then everyone has access to that. And if those dreams become, if I watch two fairly present Black men with big beards, one speaking, one dancing, and at the end of it, I am saying words like delicate, tender, moving, and in my description of the work, I am talking about the kind of Black men I would like to see. That is just a testament to the quality of what your collaboration has brought to us. To see that you can be that gentle, that soft, that intimate. And I don't know if this happened for you, Gina, where after watching everything online, if you're watching old movies and you see people coming into contact with each other, you're thinking, oh no, don't touch.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Yes, too close. I would say too close. Too close.
Yeah, totally.
And it was so amazing to watch the two of you, and I think this is to bring in Mr. Szlasa as well, where it even felt like you were in the same room, but I wasn't afraid of that touch because it wasn't skewed by anything, like you were saying earlier, like that touch is not being made grotesque in sexualization. That's a touch of like people's minds are touching, people's spaces of being are touching, people are touching each other with resonances of where they come from, and that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, truly beautiful.
I'll use this opportunity. I think we're winding down towards the end, so I'll use this opportunity to pose my last question, which is more about the jams, more about the music. I mean, there were moments. I'm sure you'll be happy to hear, Marc Joseph, that there were moments when you were speaking, and because I was watching a familiarity of physical discourse from Gregory, I heard you in my mother tongue.
Wow!
Wow!
Right? There was such a beauty that at some point your text and your lexicon filtered into my own, and I could hear you. I could hear you as myself, and I guess that has a lot to do with the two of you being so traveled and so experienced, and that's where my last question is coming from. So my question goes: you have both come to know the stage and the page as your home. As touring acts, both of you often leave home. By 16, you had heard the mantra, "Come home alive," many a time. As artists who have made the world their home, what was it like to source creative ideation from your own home? And what music made the soundtrack of home true for you?
Wow. Jefferson, you make us think.
It's great.
It's great.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's really beautiful.
yeah.
Or you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say memory has played a huge role in us crafting this work. And every time I go away from home, I always take a piece of home with me, and it's embedded in my memory. The part with making bread, it is a part of remembering my grandmother in the morning when she was making bread, and the smell of bread became my alarm clock. that was something that I was working on. And it's something that I will always miss when I'm away, because you miss that point. You miss that connection to home through things that you are familiar to. Mm-hmm. Even just sometimes music. I grew up listening to Miriam Makeba and Harry Belafonte, because that was the music and the teaching that was channeled through music. The political teaching, my father didn't sit down with me and say, now I'm teaching you about the politics of the world, of this country. It was through music that was sang that I got to learn about my country. I got to learn about the injustices of the world. So it is that memory that I took with me into the work.
And that particular album that you're referring to was banned in South Africa. So your father or whoever introduced you to that music was at great risk in sharing it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
What was your soundtrack, Marc?
I mean, there's so much. I lean on hip hop music, but if I guess, well, okay, there's music, and then there is musicality. Mm-hmm. Because if I actually think about musicality as form, then I turn to Ntozake Shange, I turn to Nikki Giovanni, I turn to Sonia Sanchez, I turn to these poets that, the sound of their voices in my head is often what I hear. When I think about home and familiarity and a kind of like home of like, where is the home? Where is the bed that my emotions lay their head? That's in the poetry of those women. Now,
especially in Sister Sonia, who literally sang some of those words.
Yes. And whose cadence.
She would sing, sing, you know, her delivery. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry, I couldn't help myself. Go ahead.
It's all good because it's true. Like, even hearing you say it, that cadence is really the prototypical cadence for so many poets in the spoken world, in the spoken word world, I guess, in the spoken world. But if it's music, if it's like first thing in the morning, Spotify is on, what am I listening to? It's right now, it's the music of Jay Dilla, a Detroit-based producer who passed away too soon. It's the music that I put on when I want to write. I put on Jay Dilla's instrumentals and just kind of follow my way down a path that has lots of boom bap, but really has a kind of trajectory moving backwards through Motown and various other genres. And then if I continue to go back outside of Jay Dilla, it's the music of Stevie Wonder, who, the music of both protest, like a kind of protest music that is so soulful.
There is a freedom to his music. There's a freedom to his sound, to his arrangements, his chordal changes, and
and also a confrontation. That thing that you said earlier, Gina, about there's a lot of promise. There's lots of folks are talking about this thing, but you haven't said nothing. You
That's
haven't
right.
done you haven't done nothing. You know, like that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all those places, which is fitting. It's the musicality of the poet. It is the music ethnography, the future facing, you know, music ethnography of an ethnology of a, you know, modern producer like Jay Dilla. And it is kind of like the godfatherly protest and liberation in the music of someone like Stevie Wonder. Those are probably the three places, the three anchor points that ground me in home.
That's beautiful. What a great question, Jefferson. All your questions are so thoughtful and incredible. This has been an incredible conversation. It's an incredible work of art, and it's just a piece that I think will, for a long time, give folks an opportunity to think and feel and bring their courage to their dreams. I think it is liberating, this work that you have brought together. And I just thank you both so much for bringing it to us and bringing it to the greater community, for an opportunity for us to not only heal, but to learn and to imagine and dream.
Right on. Right on. Thank
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know you haven't heard that from an actual audience in a while. Congratulations to both of you. Thank you. Thank you so much.